The tobacco in this cigarette comes from right here in Malawi. The money I earn picking tobacco is very little compared to the price of this pack.
In the southern African country of Malawi, tobacco is the major export crop, responsible for 70% of all export earnings. Agriculture is the mainstay of Malawi's economy, accounting for over 90% of GDP. Out of a population of 11 million, the majority of Malawians are farmers, and 7 million owe their livelihoods to the tobacco industry. But economic dependency on tobacco has not brought the country wealth. According to the World Bank, over 60% of Malawians live below the poverty line, with limited access to land, little education, and poor health. With the global tobacco market worth around $400 billion a year, Malawians are now questioning if the wealth promised from growing tobacco always goes up in smoke. Every year, Malawi's tobacco growers bring thousands of bales to the Lilongwe auction floors for sale to the major leaf buyers. US subsidiary Limbe Leaf is the largest tobacco buyer in Malawi.
Malawi exports tobacco and sells tobacco to over 70 countries worldwide. The major players in this country are Philip Morris, BAT, Japan Tobacco, the new Imperial Group, the Chinese, the Turkish monopoly. If there's any country that should grow tobacco till the last tobacco leaf is produced, it should be Malawi, because it is the lifeblood of the country.
British colonisers introduced tobacco into Malawi over 100 years ago. When the country got its independence in 1964, President for Life Kamuzu Hastings Banda took control of the tobacco estates. He increased cultivation and made the country even more economically dependent on the crop. When Banda was ousted in 1994, critics began to question who exactly benefited from growing tobacco in the new democratic Malawi.
Over the last 2 decades, the Malawi government, knowing the harmful impact of tobacco and knowing the poor returns on tobacco on its country, has increased the land under cultivation slowly and steadily, making Malawi a more impoverished country as it becomes more dependent on tobacco and not a wealthier country. The proof is very clear. It is one of the poorest countries in the world, and it's also one of the most indebted to tobacco.
One of the major critics of the tobacco industry is the Malawi Consumers Association.
When you look at this economy, do you see anything smelling tobacco? Do you see anywhere that this economy is booming because of tobacco? It's a sick economy. We should be saying, yes, this economy is doing well because of tobacco, because our education system is good, our people are living better, but our economy is going down year and year. I think the tobacco industry in Malawi has taken advantage of the poor grower.
In Malawi, according to US government figures, tobacco leaf exports have gone up. But export revenue from tobacco has fallen steadily. Over the past decade, a massive increase in global tobacco production, encouraged by the tobacco industry, has resulted in a worldwide oversupply and a corresponding decline in tobacco prices. This has inevitably meant less money for the growers. 200 miles north of the Lilongwe auction floors, tenant farmer Miriam Mirota lives on the Dapilira tobacco growing estate with her husband and 4 children.
I don't profit from the work I do. We work all year, but in the end we get nothing because the crop we grow gets low prices on the auction floors. Sometimes we make so little We have to find extra work to buy food and clothes.
Small tenant farmers like Miriam are also at the mercy of their landlords on the tobacco estates. The landlords provide the tenants with food and fertilizers and other inputs for their crop, but then deduct these costs from the prices they later pay for their tobacco.
You have a family and you take them from their home, original home, and take them to a farm. And you tell them, I'm giving you 1 acre. You grow tobacco on that acre. That's your tobacco. When the tobacco is ready, I'll buy it from you, but I'll subtract whatever I was giving you as you were growing the tobacco. You find that minus what you have been giving him throughout the year, he has nothing left. And he cannot leave your farm. In fact, he owes you more.
The tenant farmers on the big tobacco estates become, effectively, bonded labourers. For Miriam, that means the whole family must now work to repay the landlord, and her daughter Alice must sacrifice going to school.
Alice helps me work in the tobacco fields, and she also helps me string the leaves, and she takes care of the baby when I am working. The work Alice does prevents her from going to school. Also, since we are poor, she doesn't have any school clothes. If Alice doesn't get educated, I don't think she'll have a better future. Her future is doomed.
You're tying up the family. The mother and father, the children are the same. It's the same unit. So the unit agrees to say, please stop going to school. We are supposed to repay this loan and we must go and work. That's how they tie you up.
Frederick Sambo is the headmaster at Alice's local school.
Many of the students here do come from tobacco estates. It is about 70, if not 80% of the pupils. They don't come to school frequently because they are always busy with their work. And because of that, they are always backward in class. The students from tobacco estates are forced by their parents to help them doing the work. They don't have even a single pen in the pocket. They are waiting for the money to come. Now the only solution they have found is to use the children at present.
The Tobacco Workers' Union in Malawi is now trying to end the practice of child labour and to improve working conditions for the tenants on the tobacco estates.
The tobacco which is sold in, let's say, auction floors, is the same tobacco that the child produced on the ground. The employer, the landlords, the estate owners are benefiting from the child labor. The union was born to overcome bad practices that is being seen in the tobacco industry. It is the only organization that would represent the workers, the tenants who are actually oppressed, violated, victimized.
Back on Miriam's estate, the tenant farmers have asked Leo, a union organiser, to negotiate better working conditions and pay with the landlord. And their worries? Well, there's child labour and the consequences of dirty water.
They are using the water from the river. When the fertilizers goes into the river through the water, they are making poison. And when the people drink that water, they are going to sick with these chemicals which come from the fertilizers. And a landlord, he said that I can't afford to make a borehole in my estate because I have no more money.
Then there's the question of enough food to eat.
This landlord, they give them only 2 barrels of flour through a month. Then problem of child labor. Here there is plenty of kids who are working in the field.
But the landlord tells Leo he can't improve conditions for the tenant farmers. The reason? Tobacco's fetching such low prices now on Malawi's auction floor.
The prices have stagnated at $1. Since 1987, they stayed at $1 a bundle, but now they are going down a lot. With the price increase of the inputs and other things involved in tobacco farming, at the end, we always find little profit. For example, in 1987, we were buying 50 kilograms of fertilizer for 100 or 150 kwacha, but now we are buying at 1,750 kwacha.
So the cost of inputs for tobacco growing is going up, at the same time as the prices on the auction floor are dropping. The Malawian government's Tobacco Control Commission was set up to regulate the industry, but many argue that the price for buying tobacco is effectively set by the multinational tobacco giants. So the Commission has little power to ensure a fair return for local producers.
Cost of production and cost of marketing tobacco in Malawi goes up every year. Whereas the price of tobacco does not go up very much. So as a result, the net income is eroding. The farmer may not make enough money to pay the tenants. The price that is paid to the producer, it starts from the cigarette manufacturer. Because the cigarette manufacturer tells the local merchant here, can you buy me so much tobacco delivered at my doorstep at $4.20? The local supplier here will then do his arithmetic, put in all their costs. And so that will be the price that then they'll be competing for at the auction floor.
At harvest time, all the growers in Malawi, the small landlords and the large tobacco estates, take their tobacco to the auction floors. Here, the leaf companies inspect the quality of the leaves and bid against each other. But in Malawi, there's one company which buys over 50% of the crop. The landlords' organisation Tama says this reduces competition and means prices are kept artificially low, so that both the landlords and the tenant farmers suffer.
We have mainly 4 buying companies in Malawi, which is Limberleaf, Diamond, Stancom, and Africa Leaf. And the system being used now is more or less sharing, other than actual auctioning. The price is driven mainly by the largest buyers, and the others just give way. the way it is. It's monopolistic because once you see a giant like Limbelif in the floors, you know they'll control the price that day. Each one of the buyers should at least bargain for his tobacco so that a farmer benefits from the highest offer.
Limbelif's Charlie Graham hotly refutes any charges of monopoly.
Frankly speaking, I think it's quite ridiculous to think that such big and competitive companies would participate on the auction floor in the way we do and collude on pricing. We have to gain market share with every single customer. We are competing. The problem that we're facing with organizations such as TAMA are that they in their own right need to address some of their basic problems, where they stop focusing on a side of the industry that's actually working very well, and together we concentrate on the side of the industry that's not working very well, which is the growers.
According to Malawi's Tobacco Control Commission, auction floor prices have dropped around 30% in the last 6 years. Farmers feel they're the ones losing out. During the same period, earnings for the CEOs of multinational tobacco companies increased. The head of Philip Morris, for example, made over $10 million in 2002.
What we are worried about is the inconsistency of the pricing system. Because you could take the same tobacco today, sell it at so much, and you're encouraged that you're making money. Take the same type of tobacco next week, you will sell about 20-30% lower when you have budgeted for the previous price. So that inconsistency, that instability of the price is what is derailing our economy.
But Limbelif argues that any change in tobacco buying practices would plunge Malawi's economy into even graver crisis.
If we go and push the price, we probably won't be able to sell as much tobacco, number one. The prices would go up if the crop went down. People would replace that tobacco from other countries, and Malawi would lose its opportunity to, which it currently enables the tobacco industry to touch 200,000, which then extrapolates into 7 million people, you know.
As the multinational tobacco companies have encouraged more and more countries to grow tobacco, world prices have come down. In today's globalized economy, tobacco farmers must now compete not only with farmers in their own country, but with other farmers halfway around the world. Life asked both Philip Morris and British American Tobacco to comment on their leaf buying practices. Both declined our invitation for an interview. But growing tobacco doesn't just mean a poor deal for the growers. As a Ministry of Health advisor points out, it can cause huge social problems and may have contributed to the country's recent food crisis.
Anything that happens to the tobacco, poor prices on the floor means major disruption. There are people affected in terms of food security. That is why you have all these people rioting at the auction floors when the prices are too low. The tenant workers, they are busy growing the tobacco and therefore not busy growing foodstuffs, vegetables, that are essential to their well-being.
As well as using up valuable agricultural land, tobacco is also a major consumer of wood. Wood is used to build drying sheds and for the production of flue-cured tobacco. According to Malawi's Department of Environmental Affairs, the result is that Malawi has one of the highest rates of deforestation in the world.
Some of the areas that have been cleared through by tobacco estates actually were containing very valuable tree species which may never be able to come back again. overcutting of the trees, it has led to soil erosion. Most of the wood has been cleared.
Companies like Limbe Leaf say they recognise the downside of tobacco growing in Malawi. But what do they see as the solution?
We're good corporate citizens. We look after our own interests. We look after the interests of the nation as well. There's lots of different threats to our industry. It's not only child labour, it's deforestation, it's social responsibility programs, it's tenant farming. Our job and responsibility is to try and counter those, manage them, eliminate them. If they're real problems, solve them.
To address the specific problem of child labour, Limbe Leaf and other companies like Philip Morris are financially supporting programmes aimed at halting child labour on tobacco farms.
We have currently 2 projects in Malawi. We are trying concretely on the ground to improve the conditions of child workers or of the farmers who use child workers. We are not going to eliminate child labour now, but we are trying to launch a process that will take a few years and that we will see, and we should see, a reduction of child labour, more children attending school. That's what we are looking at.
But one of Malawi's leading rights campaigners thinks this doesn't go nearly far enough.
We should not consume anything that has been produced with unfair conditions. For example, if we know that tobacco from such an institution is produced by using child labor, then the buyers should not buy that. Even whether it is at auction floors level, if we know that a particular farm in the country or elsewhere uses child labor or uses unfair conditions to produce that particular tobacco, then say we do not buy.
Many Malawians now want to end tobacco production, seeing the costs as far outweighing the benefits. But with no substitute crop, the impact on the economy could be devastating.
We haven't found something yet that can replace tobacco today and be economically viable.
We've been growing tobacco for the last 117 years, I think, and we just can't get out like that overnight.
Ongoing development of the tobacco industry is critical. Outside tobacco, I don't think there's any equivalent cash crop.
But some critics wonder if Malawi has made any serious effort to develop alternative crops.
The Food and Agriculture Organization since 1983 has had a resolution on their books saying they will provide technical support to agricultural ministries in the world to help them diversify. But in the last 20 years, not one country has ever approached FAO to use that resolution and challenge them to provide the support. The reason is very simple. The very strong stranglehold by tobacco companies on agriculture ministries has blocked this happening because they fear that farmers would eventually start seeing that they can get a better return on their money in a diverse range of other product areas.
John Capito agrees. The global tobacco giants, he says, have helped persuade Malawians there's no viable alternative to tobacco growing.
It starts from every child. If a small little baby, you ask a small child, where does the economy of Malawi survive on? Tobacco. Tobacco is our god. Now that has gone in your head for too long. And who is running tobacco? It's not government. It is the tobacco industry. So you worship them. They decide where we should go. They tell us what we should do. Malawi can still survive irrespective of whether it grows tobacco or it does not.
In Geneva in May 2003, 192 nations approved a World Health Organization treaty aimed at controlling global consumption of tobacco.
The Framework Convention on Tobacco Control is WHO's first entry into using hard law or treaties to control a major public health problem. We know that with 4.9 million deaths from tobacco worldwide in about 1.2 billion smokers, tobacco constitutes one of the gravest threats to public health. We have often heard the argument that as the rest of the world reduces consumption, a country like Malawi will become increasingly more impoverished. The dependence that they have on tobacco has certainly not brought them wealth. The treaty may allow Malawi to seek additional financial resources to start doing the research required to reduce their dependence on tobacco. We are not saying people should switch tomorrow out of tobacco. We're saying let's see demand reduction happen, and let's make sure that countries start looking at sustainable livelihoods for their people.
It's a sentiment shared by many in Malawi itself.
There's no hope in relying on tobacco. They should stop using child labor. They should stop offering unfair treatment. I only hope that one day, one time, we'll have a replacement, because if we have a replacement of this tobacco business, then we can forget about all these concerns.